There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy. Guys, I've got with me today Angela Hood of ThisWay Global. Angela, how you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this talking.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited about it. So the topic we're going to be talking about is how family-style dinners, not networking sessions, build the support that leaders want and need in good times and bad. But before we get into all that, Angela, I would love it if you would just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the organization have been up to these days.
I would love to. So we are focused on solving the problem between matching people to jobs and jobs to people. And I say that very carefully, that we're not trying to match a job description to a resume. We're trying to really understand a person, really understand the job, really understand the organization that job is living in, and triangulation, matching them really effectively so that both businesses can succeed and also the people looking to make a move in their career are also super happy when they get there.
All good stuff. So because we talk a lot, whether it's in what the space that you just described or marketing or in sales, how, there is this big shift to, recognizing that behind every persona, every, data point virtually, that there is a human being or at least a human element to what we're all trying to do. And that kind of leads us into what we're here to talk about today. So this idea of like I said at the top of the interview of, how family style dinners, not networking sessions, build the support that leaders want and need. I haven't had this conversation on the show yet. I talk a lot about what folks need from their leaders, which I think is important, obviously. And then I talk X's and O's on how to get things done. But give a little bit of an overview on why this particular subject is important to you and why you wanted to talk about it.
Well, so I think that really it does come down to people. Every organization is, they have a title, the company name or whatever. And then inside that, there's teams and there's team leaders and there's this whole hierarchy. But ultimately, we're all just people and we're all trying to find success in our own particular way. And I think as leaders, we end up trying to focus on everyone else's challenges in the company. You want to help them solve those challenges. And you forget sometimes that you're having your own challenges. And you need a group of people that you can talk to about that. And I'm the founder and CEO of a company, so I have a group of people that I need to talk to. But if you're leading marketing, if you're leading sales, if you're the chief financial officer, whatever, you have different challenges from other leaders in the company. And so what I have found is if I can get around a dinner table with other founders and just be more open with them and also be open to hearing what their challenges are and trying to help them, then I find that I'm healthier, which means ultimately the company should be healthier too.
Exactly. These things do go from the top down, but as I was mentioning before, a lot of the literature and the resources are, again, focusing on what to get from those people for their teams versus what those folks actually need. And that's one of the points that I wanted to make sure that we cover, because there's a lot of different ideas on what exactly a leader is even supposed to do. And I think that can be stressful, right? Like not knowing what it is that is supposed to be the sort of the defining set of responsibilities outside of just like your job description. But what is a leader in general? So talk a little bit about that for us.
So I think it's kind of funny. If you look up leader, or you can look up boss, or any types of other words along those lines, you will see this laundry list that goes on to infinity about how people describe, like, quote, a leader. And I think really what it comes down to is it's a person that's willing to assume responsibility and is a person that's willing to listen to the people below them in order to do something that's greater than the individual. So, the combined efforts of a group of people can produce something that if they were just to operate by themselves, they wouldn't be able to do that. And to me, that's what leadership is. But you're right in the fact that because it's defined so many different ways, that everyone's version of what a leader is varies greatly. And I find that, having these dinners that we have where we sit around the table and we have this family style dining, and the first thing that we do is we ask for help. So this is the question we say to everyone else in the group. I am challenged with this problem and I need your help. And you say it in one sentence. So the first thing is you've had to identify what the problem is, you've had to ask for help, and you have to be able to look people face to face, and you're kind of bearing your soul a bit to them to ask for their assistance. And when you see what other leaders are challenged with, when they tell you what their problem is, you really understand what leadership is, because sometimes it is something intimate with them, like they're trying to find a life partner. And sometimes it's something very intimate for someone on their team that they're trying to help them deal with, maybe a health issue or something. It's all over the map. And it's given me a total new appreciation for what leadership is.
For sure. And it's someone, I know that you said part of the work that you guys do is, matching people with people in terms of, getting the right people in the right roles and things like that. And one of the things when I'm interviewing for a role or considering joining an organization, when I get the chance to meet with leaders or those folks who will potentially be my boss, that vulnerability that you just described is something that I'm always looking for. The types of questions I ask before I join an organization are typically those that are meant to sort of look for or elicit that vulnerability from a leader. And it's really a turnoff, really off-putting when you get sort of a brick wall in those situations, when you get someone who's incapable of, acknowledging, like you spoke about, that, hey, I have things that I need to improve on. And part of that is from this other idea that I want to make sure that we cover, which is this idea that leaders at least feel like they're supposed to know how to solve every different type of problem that they'll face ever. And I know that when it comes down to it on their teams, certainly that's what folks are looking for from them. But is that really realistic? Talk about that for us.
So I don't think it is realistic, but I think that we tend to struggle with it. I think we struggle with the idea that we're not going to have all the answers. And as you were just talking about, if you're talking to someone that you're looking to go to work for, that person doesn't want to be perceived as weak or not knowing the answer to a question. So sometimes people won't admit that they don't know the answer. And I think it's a challenge for us in leadership role to say, it's okay for me to admit I don't have all the answers. It's okay for me to admit that I need to lean on other leaders inside my company. And I think that getting to that point requires a certain level of maturity. And I don't mean age. I just mean that taking the effort to say, I'm going to commit to being a better leader. I think that this one of the things I've really learned from the other founders at these dinners is when they say something that you can tell was really difficult for them to say, like, I don't think I should be the CEO of the company anymore, or I don't, I've just committed to moving to an office that I actually think my entire team's going to hate, or there's just these things, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, like I really feel for them because they're going through this. And I think it makes it also then easier for you to accept your own shortcomings and to try to resolve them, because you're all in it like a safe place. But creating this place where people can be safe and convey their true challenges and get really meaningful help, and it be safe where it's not going to be spread all over town. It takes some effort. It takes some participation among other people that are also trying to get better and try to succeed in a greater way.
I love it. And I think that when we talk about, making a safe place, what we're really talking about, we're talking about making a community. And again, I think I mentioned before, there is this shift, thankfully, in business and sales and marketing for sure in the B2B space that, is sort of recovering from bro culture, recovering from hustle porn, and waking up to the fact that none of that, even if it made some folks, some organizations successful, none of that is good for the soul. None of that, over time at least, and none of that builds up the human beings behind these roles. And the unique situation that a founder or a CEO, a person in leadership would be in, right, is where, listen, it might not be. There are boundaries even within how vulnerable you can be. So in other words, your SDR team or your sales team probably doesn't benefit from knowing what terrifies you at all times because you want them to have a certain level of confidence in you. So there is the need, right, for a space like this. There's always need for community, and the fact that you're doing it with other founders who, might at times even be your competitors, right, recognizes that fact in such a special way. And I don't know that I've seen anything like it. What did we talk about? I don't know that I heard specifically you say, was there a particular experience that you had that made you say, hey, you know what, this is what needs to happen? Or how exactly was this particular idea born?
Yeah, so there was a very specific thing. So when I first had kind of the initial concept around the company, I was at the incubator at University of Cambridge in England. It's called Idea Space. Mm-hmm. And Stu, who's the director there, he has these founder dinners, and you go to them and you sit across the table from founders. And as we all normally do, you sit down next to people that you know and that you like and that you want to hang out with, whatever, because maybe you only know 4 or 5 people at the dinner.
Sure.
So in his wisdom, and we're a bunch of introverts, you have to remember that too. In his wisdom, he has everyone get up about 20 minutes into the dinner and says, okay, we're all moving seats, 4 seats to the right. So now you're sitting next to and across from people that you don't really know. And which is always an uncomfortable moment as an introvert, because you're like, oh my gosh, now I've got to introduce myself and they're going to talk to me. And I don't know if I want this to happen. And he sort of forced us to have conversations. And then he also would bring up a question to the table and say, this is the thing that I want you to talk about, And so because we were in a room with everyone else who's just like us, kind of going through the same stages, we went along. And what ended up coming out of that is we would end up staying and talking for hours. We'd go out and to the pub there in England. In Cambridge, we'd go out to the pub. And then we started connecting on our own. And then it became like we just would casually call these like sort of therapy sessions. And then once I got back to the States and I started the company here in Austin, initially there was so much going on in my life and getting the company moving that I didn't really think that much about it. And then over time, I really missed it. And I talked to a couple of other founders that were local, and I said, if I were to host this, would you come? And they were like, yes. I mean, there was zero hesitation. It was like, when can we start? Mm-hmm. And, we started having them in the first, it's still quite small, and we do this intentionally. We keep it really small because we found that is just what works better.
Sure.
And the rules are just very much like you can come in, we share a meal. It's not formal at all. We have drinks. If you want to drink, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. No big deal. And we do 2 things. We share what we need help with, and everyone at the table is supposed to offer their assistance. And then the last part is we talk about a book that we have learned something from that's not part of your standard startup book list. There's just the book list out there, and we say, talk about something that's not one of those books. And the recurring theme that I always find is it's us trying to understand people. That seems to be what the books are typically about.
I love it. And I know exactly of which you speak, right? I had this experience where back when I was in Austin. I say back when, it was like literally a month ago that I lived in Austin. When I lived in Austin, where I had this experience, and there is like a palpable desire when you get these folks together for fellowship and for a sense of community. And it just takes one person to say, hey, let's do this. And like you said, the rest of the folks, usually there's not really even any hesitation. They were just waiting and looking for somebody to say, hey, let's get together and do this. And so that they know they're not the only person that needs that fellowship, and the impact that can make is, I don't even think that we can measure it. So super glad that you put that together. And super glad that you came on the show to talk about that with us today. I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of it, even if it means just sort of looking at themselves as founders and leaders, and making sure that they're checking in with themselves, being vulnerable enough, and taking advantage of the communities that they might have available to them. So thank you. But Angela, now that I have successfully picked your brain and seen what I could get out of it, I'm interested in what it is that you are putting in it. So tell us about a learning resource that you have engaged with recently that is either informing your approach or that's just got you excited these days.
Yeah, so I will tell you something very specific, and I actually jokingly told them last week that it's a particular blog. I said, if you feel like if you're tracking everyone coming to your website, I may look like a stalker because I've been on. So we as a company are moving to a product-led growth strategy, and it's very specific, and we all encounter it. But you'll see companies like Zoom, Expensify, there's HubSpot, have all used this strategy for being able to create value for a customer before they necessarily have paid. So this is, they get to do a free trial, they get to use a certain part of the product. And we're moving our technology. We have our HR technology, and we just launched a new integration with Greenhouse that we're super excited about. And so with that, we said, okay, we're going to take on this product-led growth strategy. So I started digging in, and I found that OpenView Ventures, which is out of Boston, they just had a wealth of resources for us. And so I have been religiously going there, and I've been sending things to my team and saying, let's all get on the same page. Let's all adopt this new strategy. And this is the framework around it. Doesn't mean that it's formulaic. It's going to be exactly how we're going to do it.
Sure.
Great details of information there. They have podcasts, speaking of podcasts, that we've been, I think, pretty religious listeners to. Mm-hmm. And so I really learned a great deal about that. And I think that's really where SaaS is going. And so I think only 8% of companies right now have adopted this type of a strategy. But it's really, I think, the next generation, the next way that SaaS evolves. And I think it's going to be much more successful for us as a company, but also for our customers. And that really is where the key focus is.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. I actually just had a gentleman on the show not too long ago, and that was the topic we talked about, is why product is the new marketing. And what you're talking about is the meat of our conversation, right? How do you use your product to provide value before asking folks for anything, and let that be the proof. So I bet that's a good strategy. And I bet that OpenView Ventures has got some good resources for you. So thanks for sharing that with us. One last thing I want to hear from you is, I know folks out there who are listening, just like me, have been are fast fans of you after having this conversation and are interested in keeping up with you. So Angela, tell us, how can people connect with you?
So this is one of those things that Elizabeth is always working with me on. She's like, you need to be on Twitter more. You need to be doing this and that. So, generally, LinkedIn is a great way to reach out to me. Also, just emailing me. So we have a contact page on our website, and it goes to someone sitting to my right. So this is not just going off to some field of people sitting somewhere else. As soon as it comes in, it goes directly to me. And right now we're building out a team of product engineers, salespeople, marketing people. So if people are looking for a position, we all sit in Austin. This is an unusual thing about us. We all sit in Austin, down by Rainey Street, downtown Austin. And so if you want to talk to us about working with us, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to find out more about our products, then we'd love to talk to you too. And we love people to reach out. We find out all kinds of cool things from them.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. So folks, catch that now. Angela's talk to us about how they're leading with product and the quality of their product and how she values vulnerability as a leader. And she's hiring. Look, y'all get out there, connect, reach out on LinkedIn, do what you got to do. Thanks again, Angela, so much for coming on the show and sharing this with us. Like I said, I think it's really valuable to our listeners, and it's something that I for one, am glad that I got to hear about. So thank you.
Well, Nikki, I hope that everyone will reach me at thiswayglobal.com. And thank you again for having me.
Hey, no problem. Have a good one out there in Austin.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.